Welcome to the Secrets to Happiness at Work podcast. We have Dr. Tracy Brower with us today. And to give you a little bit of analogy before she introduces herself, she is the Mary Kondo of work, but really how to spark joy in work, how to spark happiness. And at this time, we really need it. We spend more than 90,000 hours on average in our lifetime at work. And seeing as most governments are increasing our time because they're increasing our retirement age at work, it's such a pleasure to talk with you. So, Tracy, do you want to give us a little bit of your take on what you have here today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I think this is so important. My PhD is in the sociology of work, how we affect our work and how it affects us. And I just think that I absolutely drew the long straw in studying happiness and fulfillment and alternative ways to think about work life and the future of work, because we are at such a point right now that is so critical in terms of where we go, how we shape our work, how we empower ourselves to create the conditions for happiness. So it's a good moment to be thinking about that, partly because we're struggling and challenged, and partly because I really do believe we have a bright future.
Wow. So that's you. Me, I'm Shanta Brant Larson. I'm honored to be part of this moment with you, to have that inflection. My philosophy also is about systematic view. So I'm really going to take that bigger picture with you, but sometimes drive a little bit deep. I'm really interested in the happiness side as a human dimension, more bringing that human dimension in work and in life. And that's really what I want to explore, taking a very pragmatic approach that people have something to take away. So to give people a view of what they're going to go through or the journey we wish to take you through, it's really, what are we talking about? So we crystallize what you call the secrets in your book. So we're going to give people the secrets in a very short, sharp way. So, hey, but still go and look at the book if you want more. Two is, what difference does that make? The kind of, so what does that difference does that make to work and to life? And then now what? What makes it think differently? And just to give you some points of reflection differently, we are in the biggest disengagement at the moment, Tracy. You know, disengagement has gone up, so engagement has gone down. If you look at Gallup, to around 34%. We've got so much disconnection in the world with genocide going on. And we have so much mental health issues in the world. So happiness could not be more important than it is now. So tell me, what are the secrets?
Well, one of the things, I think it's also important to talk just for a second about what it is, right? Like, I think we are challenged because we believe that we should always be happy every minute. And that sets up a condition that we can't possibly meet. We will absolutely face stress. We will face difficult times. And happiness will ebb and flow, and that's okay. We can have an overall sense of joy and contentment, even if we have a bad day, even if there is trouble happening in the world, even if there are catastrophic things going on, we can still empower ourselves to think about how we create the conditions for happiness. So that's one, is let's remember there's kind of ebb and flow, and that if we're doing it right, quote unquote, sometimes we can be judgy with ourselves. If we're doing it right, we may still feel challenged. We may still feel stressed. We may feel down sometimes. But we want to maintain positive momentum and maintain a sense of empowerment toward that. So that's one area that I think is important. Another thing I think we can be clear about from the outset is actually statistically, if you chase happiness for its own sake, you'll be less likely to be happy. You're actually better to create the conditions that we know are associated and linked with happiness through research. The reason that chasing happiness for its own sake is a less optimal idea is that you tend to be focused on yourself, which is negatively correlated with happiness. Positively correlated is focusing on your community and on others. And the other problem is you tend to be focused on chasing something that you don't already have. Otherwise, why would you be chasing it? And it's a much better idea to be thinking more about gratitude and thinking about enough and not reminding yourself all the time about what you don't have that isn't perfect. So those are two things kind of from the outset that I think are important in terms of how we conceive of happiness, right? There's a interesting concept of hedonistic adaptation, which means happiness inflation. Basically, we think we should be getting happier all the time, all the time, all the time. But life can be hard and life has struggles, but we can absolutely do some things that are empowering and good for ourselves and good for our families and communities as well. So I know you asked me one question and I gave you the answer to another one. So
That's
you
okay.
can
But I think what you're saying is I gave you some big kind of ecosystem themes, but actually you're saying it starts with self. There's an ego piece to it around these expectations that we set ourselves, which there is two sides to it, yin and yang. You called it ebb and flow. I love that. It's like a river, right? But there's these two sides that you meander along where there is going to be the down times. You could be happy and you could be sad, but also the focus. So in that flow, up or down the river, whichever direction you're going, it's not the focus of happiness itself. It's the secret is the focus of the conditions that lead to the happiness.
Yes, exactly. And I love your point. It does start with us, and we are each empowered to create those conditions for happiness. And to me, it's a both and. I love your reference to yin yang, right? It's a both and, right? Like we want to take ownership, we want to take responsibility, we want to empower ourselves to create the conditions for happiness. And communities and societies and organizations have some responsibility as well. This is the idea of both agency and structure. Agency, I have some responsibility. Structure, the organization, the society, the community also has responsibility because we have responsibilities to each other, right? Like we have obligations to each other in a really good way. So those are some of the things that come to mind as well. But I'm happy to get into what are those few conditions for creating happiness. You just tell me when you're ready for that.
Well, what are the conditions? And then I guess, well, what are the conditions, but also then what are some practical tips? Because it sounds all really good. But if it was just about the conditions, I think we wouldn't have the crises that we are in now. But then get a little bit practical about, okay, this is what someone could do that's listening.
Right. So the 5 key ways to create the conditions for happiness are to focus on purpose, kind of bigger picture purpose. I can unpack that for you. To make sure that you're intentional about building connections with other people, whether we're introverts or extroverts, we need those connections, and we can talk about how we do that. A third one that's a really biggie is learning. When we look for opportunities for learning and stretch and growth, that's a big deal, and we can be specific about how we do that. A fourth is performance. When we perform well, when we're aligned with doing things that we also have talent in, that is absolutely correlated with happiness. And a fifth is gratitude. Statistically, when we feel greater senses of gratitude, we tend to actually feel greater senses of happiness as well. And the world is the world. The context is the context. We know there's greater polarization today. There's more dissatisfaction, right? There are more people, you mentioned it, who struggle with disengagement today. And so those challenges and conflicts are going to continue to occur. But within that context, those 5 things, purpose, connection, learning, performance, and gratitude, can help us to create happiness, even if the world outside isn't perfect. Like there's really no moment when everything will be good and we could just, listen to the birds sing, right? Like we will always face challenges. So it's kind of on us to take responsibility for how we think about our own happiness and how we think about the happiness of others.
And let's take that to a day today. So I wake up today and I'm in my yin and yang. I recognize some things are great, some things aren't so great. It's cold outside, it's got darker. I already want to put up the Christmas tree. How do I actually go about practicing those 5 pieces? Like I get purpose, I get connection, but what practically can I do to bring, and I'm one of those people that combine my life and work together anyway. Yes. How can I practically go and impact those things in my life?
Yeah, so let's take them one at a time. Purpose is really about 3 things. It's feeling there's something bigger than yourself out there, number 1. Number 2, you feel like you can make a specific, unique contribution to it. And number 3, it's always got to be about people, right? Like I'll sign up for my, 15% annualized growth of my corporation, but it's always got to ultimately be about people. So the pragmatic thing that you can do to create a greater sense of purpose for yourself when you wake up in the morning is to really kind of bring your best talent and think about what you do in a small way. Like we think about often purposes, figuring out world peace or solving world hunger, right? It's huge. It's capital P. But if we just do the thing that we do, and if we're really clear about how we're making that contribution and remind ourselves of that line of sight, that's a big deal. Like the small thing that I do every day is purposeful. I get up in the morning and I make breakfast for my family. I show up at work and I support my colleague with a good idea to solve a problem that she's facing, right? I create my deliverable, which the team is waiting for, that allows them to move forward with their work. Those small efforts, but reminding ourselves that each of our small efforts matters. So that's one we can do pragmatically to create a sense of purpose.
And connection. Give me an example of connection.
Yeah. So connection has big blinking lights around it in terms of a link with happiness. Some people need more connection. Some people need less, depending on their introverts or extroverts, but we all need some level of connection with others. So we can be intentional about really connecting with people, taking time. And I like to talk about we can be attentive to other people, like really tune in and notice, right? Like if somebody's down today or up today or celebrating or needing our support. So giving attention to others, inquiring of others, like, hey, how's it going? And what's up with you? And can I help? Right. And then really number 3 is acting. Like we don't need to be social workers. We can't solve the problems of the people around us necessarily, but we might be able to offer a listening ear. We might be able to offer resources. We might be able to refer them to something that we know was helpful for us. So those 3 ideas of attending or giving attention, inquiring, and then taking action, all of which fit within a pragmatic frame of being intentional about the connections that we make. Reach out to people to spend time together. Make sure that we, are responsive to others. Make sure that we're offering reciprocal relationships, right? Like somebody invited us for coffee, let's invite them for coffee the next time. So they seem really simple, but statistically, even superficial engagement and superficial interaction actually contributes to our happiness. So, like we order on the app and we don't even have to talk to the barista, but maybe we go out of our way to say, hey, thanks for this amazing coffee today, right? That intentionality about connection is a pragmatic way that we can think about that one.
And I think you've not only just described intention, you've described the increasing of the listening. You have the different levels of listening, but you're really going up into inquiry to empathetic to generative because of what you're doing. So you're really increasing the depth of the connection, which I think then comes back full circle, increases that depth to you and increases that level of happiness, right? I know there was a TED talk years ago about older people before they die. What kept them living longer was the amount of and quality of their connections. So you kind of, for me, articulated that. That came to mind.
Yeah, so absolutely. There's all that research on empathy. I just did an article not too long ago for Forbes. I'm a senior contributor for Forbes, and I write for Fast Company and other publications as well. And I did an article on empathy, and it's had so many views. It's a really, really hot topic right now. And one of the things we know is when we have cultures of empathy, people tend to be more innovative. They tend to be more retained. They're happier and more satisfied when we feel empathy from our colleagues and when we feel empathy from our leaders. So it's absolutely true. And those deepening relationships are very significant in the journey toward happiness.
I'm going to come into the workplace. I'm looking at the time. We'll come to the workplace, but I just want to touch on the growth and the recognition and the gratitude. Just quick points of pragmatically bringing that in.
Yep. Yep, super quick. So we all need our time when we don't have to work so hard, but when we are struggling, when we're sweating, either literally or figuratively, when we're stretching, that is super correlated with happiness. So pragmatically, what you can do if you want to create the conditions for learning and growth and development in order to get happiness, you can raise your hand for a new initiative. You can reach out and stretch in a new way. If you stretch even in your personal life, it tends to spill over into your work life. So maybe you want to learn a new language. Maybe you want to expose yourself to a new or different culture. Maybe you want to raise your hand for that new project at work or that problem you're going to solve, right? So learning and stretch is the third, and raise your hand, take initiative, look for opportunities to stretch yourself. Another is performance. So as much as possible, align what you, just think of a Venn diagram, align what you love to do with what you have to do. You're never going to get perfect alignment, but as much as possible, right? And do your best. When you perform well, even if it's stuff that isn't like earth shattering, even if it's not like intrinsically amazing, you absolutely are contributing to happiness because you're contributing to your esteem. You're doing good work. You're showing up. You're influencing other people because that is the way humans influence each other. And then finally, gratitude is super related and correlated with happiness. When you're more intentional about gratitude, that's the pragmatic way to do that. So you wake up in the morning and think, what am I grateful for today? You go to bed at night and think, what's one thing that I'm grateful for today? And focusing less on things and more on capabilities, attitudes, people around you. Those sort of intangibles are actually more rewarding to us typically than, hey, I'm grateful for my, for my car or my shoes or my couch, right? Ironically,
Well, that's
it's
interesting.
less
That's the
about
first
things.
time I've heard that, because I do a gratitude list, and I'm thinking it's really about the things, but I'm going to try that around the capability. Then let's see how that shapes and focuses and changes. So we talked about it as an individual. If there are companies listening or people that are leaders in companies, how do they then bring this about within their workplace? Because you mentioned culture.
Yeah. So what we can do is when leaders are more present and accessible for people, that's absolutely correlated with people who are more satisfied, engaged, and happier in their work. When organizations create opportunities for teams to come together, great to do team building, keep doing that. That's more, the soft side. But also when we link people on projects and ask them to have shared goals where they roll up their sleeves together, that's a really good idea. When we give people development opportunities, which are aligned with where they want to go, that's another fourth way that we can be really, really good about this. And then another is to give people feedback and as much as possible align their work with what they're good at, right? So not only where do they want to go, but what are they good at today? And how do we give them feedback on the journey so they feel esteem for what they've done and feel interested in where they're going next. So those are some key kind of pragmatic ideas for organizations and leaders.
I wonder if we could give gratitude back in organizations. Wouldn't that be like amazing, like a gratitude back scheme? Because I don't know what, there's a lot of feedback reviews at the end of the year, pieces of paper that, then get gone. But the impact perhaps of having a gratitude back and the impact on others and yourself would be amazing when you take that gratitude principle into the workplace.
Yes, leaders who say thank you are modeling the way, colleagues who say thank you. I know one organization, they send out like a couple of times a year, they send out this giant amount of like thank you notes, like paper, pencil, thank you notes. And they ask people, hey, write your thank you notes throughout the year. It's their way. And I know nobody uses paper anymore. So it's sort of countercultural, right? It's their way of reinforcing, let's demonstrate gratitude in our organization. And this stuff has business benefits. Like when people are happier, they're healthier, they perform better, they tend to stick with the organization. So all of those things have business spillover as well, which is really positive.
I love that example. And we even have a real company example from you as well. So that's the what, right? What's the so what? What's the impact that you see it make? What are the challenges in reality? Like you give an example of one company implementing it. What challenges do they have to foresee and what are the opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges is us recognizing how critical it is and investing time in happiness and engagement and feeling like it's not fluffy, right? So that's a really, really big part of it. And kind of where we go next in terms of the now what and why it matters, we face really, really big challenges around us. And so when we invest in our own happiness, that is good for us. But the number one way people learn is through watching other people, listening to other people, experiencing other people. So we all have a huge influence on others, more than we realize. And so when we do the right thing to create the conditions for our own happiness and really show up and do our best, not perfectly, we're going to have ups and downs, but when we show up and do our best, we're actually influencing others as well. And when we're kind of reaching out to support other people, that's a big deal. So we're in challenging times. It's challenging to move forward. But one thing we can also do is embrace the idea of eustress. Eustress, EUSTRESS, is sort of that Goldilocks amount of stress, right? The ideal is not zero stress, like bonbons and butterflies every day. The ideal is actually that we have a bit of challenge around us. And so I think we can build our own sense of resilience, build our own sense that we can do it even when things are hard around us, by all of the ways that we talked about: purpose and connection and learning and gratitude and performance, and really, really reaching out and supporting others. So it's important to us contextually, it's important as individuals, it's important as teams and communities.
So eustress is a new concept to me. So when we talk about eustress, I understand it from an individual point of view then. From a company point of view, how challenged are they? Because everyone's going to be individual.
Right.
How do they support each individual in the mental health crisis that we have, right, in helping them to manage that eustress?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is we're giving people learning opportunities and giving them growth opportunities. And I think the interesting thing for companies at sort of the company level, right, is there's always that dynamic tension between where you are and where you want to be. Every company has a vision and a mission and the performance goals, and the distance between those creates that dynamic tension. So if you're doing it well as an organization, you also have a sense of eustress as an organization, right? We're really happy with what we're doing today. We're working hard. We're doing our best. But oh my gosh, we want to do this tomorrow and that other thing tomorrow as well, in terms of building our business and serving the community and serving people. And so that's another way to think about eustress, not only at an individual level, but at a team and an organizational level as well. And I think the key is we're not artificially introducing, I mean, we all have plenty of stress. We're not artificially introducing stress like, hey, let's make it hard for people. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that we can kind of embrace the challenges that face us and know that just because things are hard sometimes doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It means that we're living our life, and we're going to continue to work hard together with others to get to the next point that we want to be.
Yeah. So you're really, in your happiness and even in the eustress, you're really embracing the downsides as well, and embracing those challenges, those downsides, as part of the success to happiness.
It is, exactly. It's sort of the opposite of toxic positivity, right? Like,
oh God, thank you. I would welcome that.
I know. This is not about being like Mary Poppins for those of us who are old enough to remember it, right? It's not going to be all like, butterflies and roses. We will face hard times, but when we remind ourselves that we have the ability to create the conditions for happiness, I think that's super empowering.
So before we go on to just summarizing, where should an individual start and where should a company start? So they've listened to this, they've got the 5 areas. Where do you start?
I think you start in 2 places. Number 1, you get really clear about your purpose. As an individual, remind yourself, what is your unique thing that you do for the world and for your family? A tiny thing. What's the unique thing you do? And for organizations, what's that purpose that's important for you that you can communicate broadly and reinforce for employees? And the other really, really big thing is connections. Like, how can you be intentional about reaching out, about connecting? And within organizations, very, very pragmatically, how can you think about linking people up on projects where they share common goals and can roll up their sleeves together? So those are just two simple things, both for individuals and for organizations: purpose and connections.
Oh, brilliant. So to summarize, and you need to correct me if I've missed anything, because we have gone through, I think there's a lot of value actually of what we've gone through. We actually started with, and we've summarized that there is a piece of ego in here, that one of the key limiting beliefs that we have is around happiness should be, hey, and we need to accept that there's ebb and flows, or yin and yang, you know, as I put it, right? Then there's the 5 key principles, starting with purpose, connection, performance, growth, and gratitude. Oh, I can't believe I remembered those 5 in my perimenopause years. But there's those 5 pieces that we go through. And menopause can affect your happiness. And then we come on to that we came on to the so what, and you really gave some, well, not only you gave company examples, but how do you go about doing that as an individual? And where do you start? And really to start, actually, it was about starting small and starting with the purpose and starting with the connection. Did I miss anything that would really, no, oh gosh, I'm happy with myself today.
Nice job. Way to go.
Well, it was a real pleasure, and I think your books are amazing. And if you want to go for more into the secrets, I think there's nothing better than reading it. Or for me, I listen to a lot of audiobooks on script. But that's a start for people to get their core concepts, and really just to go with being imperfect, have a little bit of trial and error, but just to start somewhere small.
Yes, I love it. Imperfection is a big deal, right? We got to be able to try and learn and grow. And that means taking a little bit of risk in appropriate ways. So it's a great place to close out.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.